Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Planes, Trains, and Comic Books channel. My name's Matt, and today we're going to review Uzumaki, the Deluxe Edition. And before we get into that, if you guys would mind sharing, subscribing, it helps me out and lets me know what you guys want to see more of. So, with that being said, let's get straight into this thing. So I am doing the book Uzumaki, the Deluxe Edition, which is like a nice fat hardcover. It's about 600 pages, and it is by Junji Ito. Now, this is a little different than my normal hardcover reviews or my graphic novel reviews, and that is because I'm actually going to show you some of this one because it's basically an anthology about the same town and about the same people. So it's a weird concept, but I liked it a lot. But like I will show you exactly what I'm talking about in a second because basically I just want to set this up and then we'll just get to one of the stories. But the premise of this book is there's a town in Japan where these spirals, and when I say spirals, I mean anything that can possibly spiral will turn into a spiral. So if you got like grass, it'll start twisting into a spiral. If you got mosquitoes, they'll start flying in spiral rings. Water goes down into spirals whenever it can. The wind turns into little tornadoes everywhere. Obviously, you got snail shells and stuff like that. So anywhere there's the possibility of a spiral, it happens. I'm just going to set it up with the first story in this just to give you an idea of what it's talking about. But basically, there is a girl, and she's the main character of this story. And she, along with a friend of hers, kind of go through multiple stories that happen about these spirals. So this book is interesting because it's the deluxe edition. So it's actually 3 parts in one. So I believe this came out as 3 parts as like separate mangas because it definitely has like a flow. The first part of it is like the setup of the town and exactly what the spirals are and stuff. And then the escalation of those stories. Then the middle is even more escalation of those stories and how it's going to wrap up our main characters in it even more. The last part is the finale of all the stories, like kind of building. And but the thing is, each of these stories, each of these chapters are readable just as their own story, which is why I kind of think of it like it's an anthology. It's like Tales from the Crypt if all of them had a common theme in the same town, kind of like Stephen King books where they're all kind of interconnected by where they're placed. Like some of them all take place in Maine, or most of them do. So all of these things are kind of happening around the same areas. But this is happening all in the same town to the same kids. But yeah, let me show you one of these stories just so you can kind of get your head wrapped around it. We're going to go through the first one. And like I said, there are multiple chapters. I believe there's 19 chapters total. And this one is called The Spiral Obsession number 1. It's the beginning story. Right here, the first page, we see it takes place in the city named Kuro Uzucho. So that is the town this girl lives in. And she is the narrator. And we see that her name is Goshima. If you look real close, there's a lot of spirals and everything that she's walking through and everything. All the grass, everything's got little spirals all over it. And basically, she's going to pick up her friend Shuichi at the train station. And she hasn't seen him for a while because he has since left his town to go to a different school, like a different high school. So he's visiting and potentially coming back. So we see some more like interesting spiral things with this town. There's always like weird dust devils, or this old guy's acting weird. This is actually Shuichi's father. And she tries to get his attention, but he's not even paying attention to her because he's too busy looking at this snail. Then we meet Shuichi, and he's kind of standoffish. Basically, he came back to like help his family and potentially help her get out of the town. So he's like, we should just leave this town. I'm going to try to convince my family to leave the town. But then it turns out his dad's been acting weird. And basically, after a couple days, the families kind of meet up. And Shuichi's dad starts talking to Goshima's dad because he's a potter. So Goshima's dad makes pottery for a living. Shuichi's dad is like, hey, can you make a spiral-shaped pottery for me? And he's like, I'll pay you whatever. It'll be amazing. I'll add it to my collection. He's acting really creepy about these spirals. And just over time, Shuichi is very worried about his father now because he's gotten more and more obsessed with spirals. Anything that has spirals in it, he is now collecting and buying, spending money on stupid shit that just has spirals on it. And then he starts to go to another level where he actually starts making his own spirals and things. So like he needs to make the soup spiral before he eats it, and he needs to spiral the water before he takes a bath. And then one day they come home after hanging out to find that his dad is yelling at his mom because she threw away his collection of spirals. Because basically he stopped going to work and everything. He's so obsessed with spirals, he doesn't even care about providing for his family or anything anymore. And then he reveals something that he's been working on, which is one of the first creepy things in this book. He shows that he can make his eyes go into spirals, so that's why he doesn't even care that she threw away his stuff. He has learned a way to make each eye spiral in different directions. So each eye is kind of like going in its own spiral. Then another day, Goshima comes to deliver the piece that her dad made for him, and he's like, oh, I forgot I ordered that. I don't even need it anymore. Check this out. This is my newest thing. I can spiral. And he sticks out his tongue and he makes it spiral into this big gross spiral. She freaks out and runs away. And basically this all comes to a head. The dad orders something. We don't know what it is. It's some kind of tank. And then he's dead. Like he this tank is delivered, and then it's like, oh, we're at his funeral. We figure out that basically what happened in this tank is he turned himself into a spiral by like turning it from the inside. It's like this weird circular tank, and he got in it and was able to turn it from the inside to make his body into this creepy fucking spiral. And that's how he died. And then after the ceremony, they cremate his body as part of the ceremony, and his ashes go into the sky as they burn them and actually turn into a giant spiral in the sky. That's the first part of this. That's the only part I'm going to read. But basically, I just wanted to give you guys like a taste of the stories of this book. That's like the setup, but the creepiness with his eyes and his tongue and what he does to his body is just the tip of the creepiness in this book. Like I said, each story is like that. The beginning ones are a little bit more connected. Like the Spiral Session 2 is actually part of this book. It tells you what happened to his mom after his dad dies, which is even more fucked up than that. But then eventually it starts becoming one-offs about her life because they never leave the town. He goes into kind of hiding after his parents, and then we kind of follow her through a large portion of the book where she's just going to school regularly and just things are happening to her every day at the school. I will say some stories that stuck out, and I'll kind of talk about it a little bit. There's one called Medusa where she goes, all of a sudden, Goshima's hair starts growing out. It will spiral at the bottom, so it starts getting these weird spirals. And then all of a sudden, the hair starts kind of growing on its own, like getting a life of its own. It won't let her cut it. And then there's a girl who's jealous of it that also gets spirals in her hair. And they end up like fighting with their hair, and it's creepy and weird. The other one that I found really creepy was one called Jack in the Box. That one is about a kid who's like obsessed with her, like romantically, where he's like, he thinks he's in love with her, but he's a little kid. So it's like kind of his first love. And he like, to prove his love to her, because he's like, oh, playing hard to get, huh? I know what I'll do. I'll like jump in front of this car. I'll like stop it to show you that that's how much I love you. And he does that, and the car doesn't stop. And then the boy comes back. She starts getting creeped out by hearing things or seeing things. Like he gave her a gift that was a Jack in the Box, because that's what he gets called in school, because he's always like popping out of nowhere. And it pops out of nowhere and is like, he's still alive. He still loves you. He's coming for you. And like, it's super creepy and weird. So yeah, basically there's a lot of other stories in this, but out of the 19, most of them are not like connected to each other directly. So you can just read them as one-offs and just be like, that was a fucked up story. So it's a very interesting way of doing a book like this, because there is a narrative through it with the two teenagers and everything, but most of the stories in it until you get to the end don't really connect directly to each other. So some of them are two offs, like two parts where like they'll happen back to back, and it makes sense because of where each person has been, but they're definitely in chronological order. So you wouldn't want to read them out of order necessarily. But yeah, I mean, this is like a really interesting book because of the way it's laid out. And then also the art is fucking amazing, as always. Junji Ito's art is beyond compare. The thing about this book that didn't quite connect with me was the storyline. Once you get to the ones at the end that are more like connecting and are trying to like wrap up this story, I kind of thought, there wasn't so much fulfillment in the way it ended. It didn't wrap up what it kind of set up to me, or like good enough for me, I guess. It does wrap it up though, so it does have an ending. I was not like satisfied by it personally. And because of that, I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Like I said, the art's amazing. There's a lot of really good, creepy stories in this book. But as a collection, on the whole, the story doesn't quite satisfy me the way I wanted to. But it's definitely really good. There's some really fucked up things in there. Definitely check that out if you want some horror in your life. And we'll see you guys on the next one.